right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Coffee Break Chat. I'm just doing some last second updates. Anybody who knows me personally online probably saw my post the other day. I lost a set of headphones about a year ago and then just found them. and I used them for this broadcast and as a monitor, which is the headphone you see in my ear. and Unfortunately, that means that I'm missing a setting here that I need to create. But let me bring on our special guest this morning. Welcome back. Let me turn you guys on to the I show you and built-in speakers. That should be good for I'll be able to hear you. And welcome back to Grayce and Amanda Jensen of Paper Doll Ensemble. And good morning.
Morning.
Morning, James. Thanks for having us.
No problem. It's another lovely Wednesday here in Philadelphia. It's a coffee break chat day. You're gonna hear a little echo on the broadcast right now, but I apologize, and I'll try and fix that up during the broadcast. Amanda and Grayce do have a theater company, and you guys do try to do some social justice work from time to time, as I understand. And so yesterday morning, you guys tried to log in your Facebook and found that everything was deleted.
So, as part of our anti-racism action plan with Paper Doll Ensemble, we've implemented this online discussion group called Paper Dolls Clubhouse. And we tackle different issues, and we have talked about intersectionality and Kimberly Crenshaw, and we just have this forum for discussion about, how to be an actively anti-racist community. And our most recent event was dealing with Steve Hassan's book, The Cult of Trump, and a podcast related to it called Trust Me. And in that podcast, they talk about QAnon and far-right conservatives and how a lot of the same methods that Trump is using to control his supporters are used by cult leaders. And so we're going to have a discussion about it. And apparently we used enough buzzwords in the description of that event, Trump, cult, far right, QAnon, and the algorithm on Facebook that they're using to shut down any events or companies that are inciting violence right now. We kind of got swept up in that. And so our Paper Doll Ensemble business account, as well as any personal accounts that were associated with it, including my own personal account, Amanda's personal account, our other co-founder, Sarah Vaness, and our stage manager from our most recent online event, Hannah Spear, all of them are disabled. And they're disabled in a way where when we try to appeal it during the process that you would normally do if your account was disabled for violating Facebook's code of conduct, it says that this decision cannot be reversed and you are unable to appeal. End of story. There's no human being you can contact. Did I miss anything, Amanda?
No, that's pretty much it. The thing, the funny part about all of that is on the first pop-up when you sign in, it tells you your account has been disabled. It says you have 30 days to repeal and to get your account reactivated. And here's where you do that. It sends you to a link, and you go to that link and you put in the information, and then that's when the other pop-up comes up. It's like, no, you violated our community standards. It's permanently disabled.
So egregiously.
So what I find interesting and what I'm upset about with all of this is it says you can repeal this. Like, if you think this is wrong, we're going to give you a pathway to prove that it's wrong. And so when we go to do that, then we're shut down. And so, nope, you don't get to prove that you're wrong, and that's it. And yeah, So that's
obviously
the whole.
we understand, that it's very important to be implementing this algorithm right now so that the people who are trying to organize attacks similar to what happened at the Capitol are not able to do so. Or, Facebook is at least trying to cover their own ass and say, well, that didn't happen on our platform. And I totally am like, great, it's so good that you're catching all of those accounts, but for there to be no human oversight, we know that algorithms and bots are not a perfect science, and for them not to offer the opportunity to call, email, virtually appeal. Even I can't even access the help center anymore because I don't have an account. So that was the advice online, was like, oh yeah, just go to the help center. And I was like, cool, I would totally do that, but I literally don't have an account.
I love the
anymore.
unhelpful help center stuff.
The help center is so unhelpful. You go to the help center, it's like, it like just describes what happened. And you're like, yeah, that's what happened. What do I do? And it's like,
don't know.
That's not what happened to you. And you're like, yeah, but no, nothing.
But how do I fix that? No, no, don't. No. I don't know. I don't know how to fix that.
The thing is, like, Facebook's a private company, so I get, like, they can do this, and that's fine. And I think that what they're doing is long overdue. And I think part of the problem is because it's so long overdue, they're scrambling to try and fix this and make themselves not look culpable. And in that like rush to fix this and rush to like finally do something that they should have done months, years, so long ago, that smaller like companies or people who aren't actually, in QAnon, people who aren't actually doing these things are getting caught up in this. And that's the problem there, because algorithms don't understand context. They're just searching for specific like buzzwords or specific phrases. So you lose all that human aspect of like, well, when we wrote this, it's about discussing how to, like, if your family's in QAnon, how do you talk to that family member to try and get them to at least, like, how do you plant the seeds of doubt in their mind to get them out, which is like what Steve Hassan talks about on the podcast and in his book. And that's what we were going to discuss. And that's like, why is that? That's not bad.
Well, interestingly,
the exact opposite.
So, interestingly, this production company, like Beef Productions, we try to publish news along with all the other stuff that we do. We recently became contributors to a new Philadelphia-based independent magazine, which is the Philly Plain Dealer. You can find it at phillyplaindealer.com. At any rate, Philly Plain Dealer was the only way I could get out the news on Monday that there are planned insurrectionist riots on the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th. And some that I haven't seen apparently also planned on the 16th. So I went to publish that, and as a person who publishes very regularly, I just went through all the normal things, tried to add the photos, and as soon as I tried to add the photos to the post, which were photos that I had redacted some of the URLs of from the websites, organizing these seditious acts. The Facebook was like, no, and like started like glitching and like not letting me publish this information. And these are screenshots of people calling for sedition going back 3, 6, 9 months. So these calls for sedition have existed, but Facebook wasn't letting me publish the information as a news source, as a publisher. Which, algorithmically, it's a lot easier to to OCR scan an image and go, okay, this image has guns in it or has words in it that will not be, are leading to violence. and to just reject those posts. The problem with Facebook, with any online content, has always been that their margins between where they make money and the amount of hours that they have to put into something to make that money have always been very thin. So yeah, it's they don't have individuals actually working on on any user side stuff. I was working on a 6-month contract for Philadelphia Unemployment Project. Just getting to the point for a well-known 30-year-old nonprofit organization to get them as a verified nonprofit organization that has existed for 30 years was, I spent about 1 full week of 8-hour days getting to a real person. And that's the level at which Facebook has real people. So.
No, James, don't tell me that. I mean, our only strategy right now, and this, is that, short of like DMing Mark Zuckerberg to like blast this out, which is why we really appreciate you having us on here, that we are like starting a hashtag campaign, hashtag save the dolls, to attract Facebook's attention in some way so that we can get an appeal. And I don't know what else to do. It's so frustrating. So, if anyone watching has any insider information or knows someone working at Facebook that we can hit up to be like, hi, hello, we're actually...
I don't remember what my schedule is today, but yeah, it looks pretty good. After this call, let's jump on a call together, and I have some strategies for you, but and contacts, but yeah.
Thank you.
So I also wanted to welcome on some regular guests. We have with us Charles Graham and Chris Miller. If Charles, if you want to jump on video and audio and introduce yourself. And your pronouns and what it is you do, and Chris, if you want to go after that.
I'm Charles Graham, he, him, or they, them, and I'm a software developer from Philadelphia, currently working remotely in Puerto Morelos, Mexico, and kind of getting away from all of the craziness, and I'm glad that I don't have access to see it. So, good thing. Yep, me.
Hey, Chris, go ahead.
Hey, how's it going, James? I'm Chris. He, him, they, them pronouns are fine with me, and I normally I'm a union stagehand in the city of Philadelphia, but right now I'm fun employed without all of the fun that having actual unemployment provides. So, just hanging in there and watching the show unfold. I guess we're finally seeing the show that Donald Trump and all of his followers have told us that we've been waiting for, right?
Yep. So I brought you guys live because I know, Charles, you can speak a little bit to the computer side here. Like, where, in your experience, do you know, like, where do companies usually draw that line between like dumping in hours into a product versus, like just going, okay, we need to automate all this, and in my experience, I know places where that decision is made, but what do you think your experience is with it?
It depends on context, the company, all that other stuff. So Facebook, are we talking about the instance of Facebook, like just doing that specifically, or are we talking about in general? Or I forget who said it to the man or Grayce that like it seems like they're late to the game and they just like implemented something, and that's probably what happened. So what I'm guessing happened is that they already did pre-election. They started to do stuff where they and Republicans were actually like questioning Mark Zuckerberg, like you're inhabiting free speech, and they're like, no, what the person said was wrong, provably wrong. So like, what are you talking about? So I'm guessing as they started to do more stringent things, especially things of hate speech and things of used to try to overthrow the American government, I think they were fine with trying to like Egypt, and like we were cool with that, but like America, not so much. So what I'm guessing is what probably happened is they probably, especially since like this got way too crazy, they implemented something and they probably weren't able to staff up appropriately because usually, and I'm assuming Facebook has this, like I know YouTube does, where they have they have algorithms that'll flag potential issues, but people have to actually go through and look at this stuff. Um, I'm guessing they probably just don't have the time. To be honest, they probably didn't staff up fast enough. If I had to bet, um, that's just my general opinion. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, like I've seen it oftentimes where a company just won't have there's this actually comes interestingly around to what's going on with Parler right now. Companies will try to do something in specific, try to create like this free speech network, and then really get in over their heads because the user base expands much faster than your business model can. Moving your business model takes a little bit of time, and then you get these you get these situations where your techs are telling you one thing, your business guys are telling you another thing, and you just don't have the money or time to change what you're doing. Yeah, that's what is probably happening in this case, and in a lot of cases with stuff going on right now. They're trying. Unfortunately, that trying just isn't getting it done.
Yeah, well, I think Amanda brought up a really good point that like a lot of this action is so long overdue that to get it done as sort of expediently as it needs to get done to be effective, they just don't have the resources like Charles was saying. You don't have the manpower on staff to handle that, and it's really just they messed up by not handling this problem a long time ago when people were saying, hey, this is a problem.
Yep. And not to be reactionary, but just to say it outright, it's the hubris it's the hubris of whiteness. It's the hubris of being a developer and thinking, hey, I've got this handled, I can make this thing happen, and not thinking through the consequences of making this thing happen, which is also a large part what's going on with things like Parler. Folks are creating something and then not realizing that they need to then moderate it and make it not cause massive violence in the world. I don't know how else to say this.
To not accidentally be party to a violent coup attempting to overthrow the U.S. government. Yeah, it would have been really good if they thought that one through.
Yeah.
This is a little off. This is a little tangent, but question: have any of you listened to the podcast called Rabbit Hole? Because it's about algorithms and how they have like manipulated people, and how things like YouTube and the way that their programmers were writing the algorithms and the machine learning have like steered people in this direction of going either far left or far right. It's a really good podcast. I can't remember how many episodes it is, but it talks to people from YouTube and people from like Twitter. It's excellent, and it talks exactly about all of this.
Awesome. I'll have to look it up. I never get time to do podcasts. I get time to like make a podcast, and then I don't get time to listen to it.
I think because they talk to this developer from YouTube who noticed a problem with the algorithm, saying like, look, the algorithm is learning what these people are watching, but it's not balancing. It's not showing them things from other like news sources or other people with like different perspectives on this subject. So it's just, what was happening is the algorithm on YouTube was starting to like radicalize people by showing them more and more and more and more radical content.
Well, I think the bias for YouTube's algorithm is it's basically exclusively what keeps people online clicking stuff, and it really doesn't take into consideration content any more than people who watch X YouTuber have also watched Y YouTuber, and when they go from X to Y, they spend that much more time. So we're gonna keep shoving this stuff down your throat because it puts money in our pockets.
You're exactly right.
I'm so old. I remember when Amazon first introduced stuff like this, and I thought it was amazing and beautiful. You're like, oh, I like this book, and I like that book, and it was like, they were right. And like,
how naive we all were.
Like, you're like, oh, this is just evil and horrible. Yeah, I haven't seen the documentary on Netflix that's talking about this, but it was like done by a guy who
also
worked for Google. What's the name of that?
The social I can't
dilemma.
Remember. The social dilemma. It's excellent. And then they talk to people from YouTube, they talk to people from Twitter, they talk to developers who like they talk to the founders of Twitter, and they're like, oh, I don't let my kids have any social media. Oh, I don't use Twitter anymore. I don't have notifications on my phone. They talked to one guy, I can't remember his name, but he's like a developer and an advocate for like social change, and I can't remember what else he does, but he's like really fascinating. He's like, always pick your content. Do not let the algorithm pick for you.
I actually do that. I run, and I recommend this for anyone, anybody who who's watching this broadcast, and I know we don't have a huge audience, but I will recommend some things for you. Run ad blocker. There's AdBlock Plus. It's free. Run an ad blocker. Run in an ad blocker in a browser that is relatively anonymized, like Brave browser. Use ad blockers and remove the tracking ability of websites. They all have to let you track or tell you, or let you choose whether or not your browsing is tracked or your preferences are tracked. Don't let them track it. It makes your browsing life a lot more interesting. We like to talk about echo chambers and stuff, but sometimes it is much better to choose your own content, choose your own adventure, so to speak.
Well, I have a kind of funny anecdote about I guess algorithms and not doing that kind of stuff that you're saying. Over the summer, as a lot of the Floyd protests were going on, I was taking in a ton of media, and I would sometimes take in sort of like quote unquote oppositional media just to see what else was being said on sort of the other side of the argument. For a number of reasons. One, I wanted to be aware of like the obvious lies, and two, I wanted to be prepared to sort of counter those narratives. But even just dipping my toe kind of into that world, I started getting like video recommendations for like some pretty out there stuff, and I was just, how did I get here? Like, it was, you know, it wasn't like I veered very far off of the beaten path. You know, I kind of went from some of the left-leaning, you know, YouTubers to some of the like bigger right-wing leaning YouTubers, but then before I knew it, I was just like, this is really unfamiliar territory. Where did all of this come from? And it's, you know, if you're not managing that algorithm, things can spin out of control pretty quickly.
Yeah, it totally can. Yeah, and you know, and it's interesting, the stuff that they toss at you. A lot of it is very clickbaity and very quick to draw you in. But then
yeah,
you know,
X person gets destroyed. that's the classic YouTube type.
So a little bit on, I wanted to talk a little bit about the insurrection, and you know, some of the stuff that we've been tracking news-wise, and also some of the stuff that's been going on behind the scenes. So, like I said earlier, you know, we try to publish newsworthy stuff here on this channel, and I didn't go live with the insurrectionist stuff on Wednesday after our broadcast, and there's a very good reason for that, and that's because we didn't have anybody on scene. We actually intentionally didn't have anybody on scene because the threats of violence were already pretty well known and pretty public. And I intentionally didn't send any camera people down to DC. So, you know, there's a lot going around about people acting like, you know, this was Antifa, insurrectionists embedded and stuff like that. You know, but there are clips of photographers and news media and people who they thought, the group there thought were Antifa, being attacked, you know, during those riots. And, you know, I'd just like to, you know, say that it's impossible for there to have been any anti-fascist activists in that crowd because they would have been dead. But besides that, it's interesting to see the places where this all gathers together. So I live in Philadelphia. We all live in Philadelphia, and there's news channels, and the local news channels have a lot of following on Facebook and social media, and the Facebook comments for several of our news channels kind of interestingly illustrate the editorial content of those news channels. Like, if you go to 6ABC's Facebook page and read the comments on anything, it's scary. It's interesting to I wonder how much I often wonder how much the editorial content is affecting the algorithmic drive as well. So yeah. Another thing that we need to talk about today, and this is a horrible segue, and I apologize for the horrible segue. The PPP and EIDL are coming up for another round of PPP and EIDL. As Chris mentioned, he's fun employed. I'm employed at this point only in doing freelance work. You know, Grayce, Amanda, you guys do freelance. You run a small theater company. There are tons of us in this segment of the economy that are small business owners, in sole proprietors, individual contractors, and the PPP and EIDL are actually being re-geared to specifically address our concerns. So do you guys know anything about the PPP and or EIDL?
I've never heard of it.
Charles, you've
Yeah.
never heard of it?
I've been a little bit distracted by kind of what else has been going on, so I haven't actually gotten too up to date on the new PPP, and I don't know what the other one is, to be honest. I do remember being very outraged though at the original PPP.
Yeah, a little more context, because this sounds familiar, but it's not making any connections in my brain, so I'm just not sure if I'm remembering correctly.
So in my other life, I am the director of communications for 11th Hour Theater Company, and so we're a small nonprofit, and we were a recipient of the first PPP, which, like, thank God. And so this next round is definitely important, and I'm really glad that it is considering freelance artists. I also volunteer with a group called Be an Arts Hero. And they have been really pushing for this legislature and senator writing and calling campaigns before this passed to really advocate for arts workers, because in the gig economy that we work within, there is no like payroll protection plan for us that doesn't make sense as a freelance artist, because you don't work with one company consistently that then they're like, oh, here's your payroll, or even unemployment, was a really difficult process. And as 11th Hour, we had to like file all this paperwork and come up with like, okay, how do we speak the language of that this document wants when we are hiring, like, this person worked for us in January as an actor for, a few weeks. It's not like we had them, they were a 1099, they were a contract worker, they weren't, a W-2 employee. So it's the first round was like completely ignorant of freelance workers and contract work. And I know that FPUC is part of this new plan, but it's only the $300 a week and not the full $600. And so Be an Arts Hero is also pushing for that. If you don't follow them, you should, because they're an awesome collective doing a lot of really great work.
The Philadelphia Unemployment Project is pushing for that too. Yeah.
Awesome.
So the PPP and EIDL, though, are specifically geared towards helping small businesses, sole proprietors, and it's actually this round of the PPP just started on Monday, and this is actually only the second round of the PPP. This is the Payroll Protection Program. It was designed originally to be a stopgap for the first 8 weeks of the pandemic. It was designed to get money out into the economy real quick and rescue small businesses and individuals and keep them from going on to the unemployment rolls. So it failed horribly because unfortunately
instead the Catholic Church got all the money.
Yeah, well, I mean,
not all, but
my organization got some money, other organizations got some money, but I was in one of the first cohorts to apply, and Light Thief Productions didn't get its PPP loan until July, end of July, actually, almost August. So that was lagging far behind the time when we had to make decisions as far as are we going to employ somebody, are we going to keep paying somebody, etc. Anyway, the round 2 opened on Monday, and they did some interesting things with the rollout of round 2 to actually protect sorry, the actually protect the people who didn't get the first round of PPP. So on Monday and through today, only folks who did not get the first round of PPP were able to apply for the second round of PPP. And only people in economically impacted zones. So if your average income in your zip code was under the poverty line, that kind of thing. So it was designed to protect, to enable access to people of color and people who normally didn't get access to the first round of PPP. As of today, smaller banks and lenders are able to start accepting applications and submitting them. And these are neighborhood and regional lenders. So they're lenders who help small businesses who don't normally have access to regular banking, like big business banking, like banking with Chase or banking with a large institution. They're folks that provide services to actual small businesses, micro businesses, that kind of thing. And then I believe beginning next week sometime, the full version of the second round will roll out, and people who are anywhere can apply to the PPP. The interesting thing about the round one PPP is it didn't distribute all of its money. Not enough people applied. So if you're in the arts, if you're a sole proprietor, if you're a freelancer, I'm highly encouraging everyone to apply for this round. Apply as a sole proprietor. If you did work in 2019 and you got a 1099, you are eligible for applying as a sole proprietorship, because that's doing 1099 work makes you a sole proprietor. And you can apply with your social security number, unless you've gone through the trouble of creating an LLC and getting an EIN and all that stuff, then apply that way. But yeah, and if anybody needs help with this, I have some resources, some people that you can talk to. Feel free to get in touch via DM or on our social media, and I'll share out those resources. EIDL, this is actually basically round 3 of the EIDL. EIDL is Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And normally those are available to people for things like hurricanes or droughts or things like that. They did make a national EIDL, a national emergency for the pandemic. And the EIDL is just a straight loan. It's not. It is not a forgivable loan like the PPP. So the PPP has the advantage of, after you're done spending all the money from the PPP, you can apply to have that forgiven, just as long as you spend it on forgivable expenses. And as a sole proprietor, if you just pay yourself, that is a forgivable expense. So apply for the PPP, pay yourself, apply for forgiveness, done. And then you won't have to pay it back. The EIDL, on the other hand, is a loan. It has a up to $10,000 grant portion, and it's time sensitive because they're probably going to run out of grant money. There's much less money in the EIDL program, but you can apply for and get the EIDL loan, receive the grant, and then refuse the actual loan portion if $10,000 is enough to carry you through the next couple of months, then I highly suggest you also apply for that. The EIDL round 3 will start also with economically disadvantaged areas, and it has several advantages over the last round, and would highly recommend anybody look into it. Basically, some of the basic changes are that it looks at quarters of 2020 versus 2019, and then in your application process you have to prove that you earned 25% less in one quarter of 2020 than you earned in 2019. For all of us in the theater industry, that's really easy because we basically didn't work from March to June. So there is a quarter where most of us don't have zero receipts. Yeah, that should be relatively provable for you if you worked at all in 2020, and then come around to or 2019 and you come around to 2020 and you're in the pandemic. Folks in theater and the live arts are really should consider applying for the EIDL. Valuable program for all of us, and can get you some money to keep your business afloat, your sole proprietorship, your small business, what have you. And I would recommend everybody look into it. We'll probably do, we're trying to get, I'm trying to, with a consultant, get a handle on all the intricacies of the EIDL and the PPP, and then I want to do a broadcast about it, but we haven't gotten there yet. You know, I often say, you know, about this program that it is from the perspective of and geared towards the perspective of people of color. And this is a program that gives people of color access to money that that is equally accessible to people of color as it is to anybody else. In fact, some of the stipulations of the PPP and EIDL this round make it more accessible to people of color, and I highly encourage any person of color, any black person, any person who lives in an economically disadvantaged area, you know, and there are websites where you can look up if it is an economically disadvantaged area that you live in. And I will get those URLs and post them for folks in the broadcast. If you live in an economically disadvantaged area, these programs are designed right now to get money out to you. They didn't in the first rounds get money out successfully to the people that they were designed for. A lot of the loans went to bigger businesses that rather than exactly small business. So one of the other big changes they've changed is now companies cannot have more than, it used to be 500 employees per location. Now they can't have more than 300 per employees, including all locations. So that is a huge change and gears it much better to actual small businesses. The maximum loan amount came down from 2 million down to 1 million, if I recall correctly. And there's no, now in the round 2, there's no combining applications. So in the old rules, if say you were a restaurant with 100 locations, but they all employed 25 people, and you applied for $1 million per location, you could get $10 million, $100 million. Now they've made it so that that is not possible anymore. So it is much more geared to actual small business, and I would encourage any small business people to apply. So with all that refresher and information, now what do you guys know about the PPP and EIDL?
Well, I know that on the first go round, one of the biggest issues that I think everybody saw was that companies that had ridiculous amounts of like existing cash flow that really were not in need of aid gobbled up a lot of that. I'm surprised to learn that not all of the funds from the original PPP were actually used up. I think I was under the impression that that they had been, and I'm wondering if maybe some of the media coverage about the original PPP impacted people who maybe could have applied and could have gotten in on the first round, but heard all of these stories about, like, say, Harvard or whoever, taking 40, 50 million, and, everyone got concerned that everything was going to run out, and so that encouraged people to just not apply.
Well, the PPP, both rounds, was practically an unlimited pot of money for all practical purposes. People could have taken huge loans and still gotten money. And what happened in my experience of it is that people got confused between the PPP news and the EIDL news. These are two separate programs, and the pots of money are completely separate. And the EIDL money did disappear.
Okay, so yeah, maybe, I mean, that's probably my fault for not being more literate about it, but I'm also going to go ahead and point my finger elsewhere and say, like, hey, news could have done a lot better job differentiating between those programs, because, like, to be honest, is the EIDL, is that the
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so this is the first I'm hearing of that. I'm not a business owner, so that could also impact my level of knowledge when it comes to that program. But yeah, I think our government and our media kind of did a really bad job of letting people know about what these programs actually were and how to use them, like you just did.
I think it was intentional, to be honest.
Oh, certainly, absolutely it was.
I also feel like what I heard about the PPP is that it was the way to apply was extremely convoluted, and a lot of people had trouble actually proving and applying for it, and that's where a lot of the complications also happen. So it was like it's twofold in that sense.
Oh, so what you're suggesting is that because it was so complicated, it precluded people who didn't have access to, like, a professional accountant or something like that. Yeah, I feel like that's like how the tax code works too. It's almost like there's this underlying theme here of making things extremely difficult for people who don't already have billions of dollars.
So the PPP, the PPP, the EIDL was super simple to apply for. You only needed to know two numbers, and that was your gross receipts from last year and the cost of your cost of goods and services. So how much you spent in what's considered COGS when you're filing your taxes. The PPP was completely different based on who you were applying for the PPP through. So whereas the EIDL was done directly by the SBA, the Small Business Administration, the PPP was done through banks, and so the banks took, and this round of the PPP is also being done through banks. The banks took on the liability of checking everybody's application, making sure it met the criteria under the law, and then approving those applications, and then collecting and being responsible for collecting the money afterwards. So basically administrating the loan. And they get a small percentage because of this. They get a small percentage of each closed loan, and I think it's something like 1.5% or something like that. So what this created was a lot of larger banks decided to only work with the customers that they had worked with in the past, and or they prioritize the bigger applicants, because obviously if you have to do the same amount of work for any application, but you're going to get $10,000 for one application, you're going to get $500 for another application. Well, let me prioritize the $10,000 application. So that's what they did. Some banks, like the bank that I chose to go with, which is Republic Bank, which is a local bank here in Philadelphia, chose to work with new customers and treat everybody equally. And the process itself wasn't all that bad. It's a little complicated if you don't think about things in a business sense all the time. But for Republic Bank, it just turned into either give us your taxes from last year, or here's a worksheet, list all your receipts by quarter, and we'll tell you how much you're eligible for. And so I did that math, and that was relatively easy for me. I don't know necessarily how easy that is for everyone, but it was relatively accessible once you actually got into it. Anyway, so yeah, I would say definitely apply for the PPP. If you live in or around Philadelphia, apply through Republic Bank. They'll be putting up their PPP Round 2 info whenever they get the green light to start processing applications. And I would say apply through them, or apply through one of the. If you're a person of color, there are targeted banks that are geared directly towards providing loans for people of color and people who don't normally have access to banking, and I'll provide some of those resources again in links on the broadcast. At any rate, it's 10:59, so I've droned on long enough. I'm going to stick around with Amanda, and Charles and Kristen. You're welcome to stick around, and as we talk about some of the resources for Facebook and getting you guys accounts back online. I'm not sure how successful we'll be, but welcome to stick around and talk about it. And for everybody online, appreciate you joining us this week, and appreciate my guests for joining me this week. I'd like to thank Amanda Jensen, Grayce Hoffman, Paper Doll Ensemble, Chris and Charles, regular guests, and like to thank you for joining us again this week. Please, if you like what you're here, if we've provided any resource for you, if you enjoy just independent content in and of itself, please consider subscribing to our Patreon. We have levels as low as $1 per month. Gets you access to Patreon exclusive posts, some Patreon exclusive tools that we have posted on the page, like our police scanner utility for Philadelphia, and some other things that we'll be coming out with in the coming months. And if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, through Patreon is also a great way to get them right in front of me and my attention. Feel free to check out the Patreon, check out that's Light Thief Productions on Patreon, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the Facebook page. You'll get notifications every time we go live. And so thank you, everyone, and please do tune in next week for another coffee break chat, and we'll see you then.